Hello and welcome to part 5 in this series on self-hosted implementation of Omeka for librarians. In this video, we're going to create the MySQL database for our Omeka instance. In the previous video, we kind of set the stage, downloaded Omeka, and got things in place to actually get to the point where we can build our database. We are on step 3 in the installation process. I think there's actually two parts to this, and I'm going to split them up because they can both be a little time consuming to create, especially if we run into problems. So with this video, we'll look at how to build the MySQL database. In the next video, we'll look at how to enable modifications in the Apache server. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is run the command MySQL. So we're telling Linux we now want to go into the MySQL server, and we're going to do that with a -u for user, and we're logging in as the root user, so we'll type in root, and then -p, meaning we're ready to enter the password. So enter. When we set up our MySQL server, we had created a password. In my case, I had used password and enter. And so now we're in the MySQL database, and our Linux commands will no longer work. That might be especially confusing to those of you who are new to this sort of thing, but there we have it. We are in MySQL, and we need to use SQL commands as opposed to Linux commands. So the very first thing we need to do is create a database where all of our data is going to be stored on the server. And that is done by running the command create database Omeka. And don't forget the semicolon. I'm sure I will do that a few times through this tutorial, but I frequently forget it. So create database Omeka. So we're creating a database called Omeka. Okay, so looks like the query was okay, and we should be all set. So now what we need to do is make sure that our user has all of the proper permissions. And in your case, I actually might recommend just copying and pasting from the Omeka website using their instructions, but I'm just going to type it out so that I can kind of explain it as I go. So we're going to use the command grant all privileges on the database Omeka and its subsequent tables to our Linux user, which is library admin. So library admin can access these files or access this database and make changes. And let's see, the next, all right, to library admin, and I'm not sure if, I'm not sure if we need to put in the quotations or not, but I'm going to, just because it's in the instructions. Okay, library admin, and then at localhost. So localhost being this server, and then the command identified by. Now it says password in the instructions. I'm using password, but that's because my password is password. So this is an important part of the configuration. It's not so secure. That's why it's really hard to get into a MySQL server. Typically it's protected because the passwords are out here in plain sight. So don't forget the semicolon and enter. And it looks like that went through just fine. So before I go, I do want to well, let's flush privileges. And I'm not 100% sure what that does, but it's pretty standard. And then, so now I want to see what databases I have in my MySQL server, and I can do that with show databases. Oops, see, I forgot the semicolon. And so here is our Omeka database, and we know that it has been created. So the last thing we do is quit, semicolon, and when we do that, we're now placed back into our Linux server, so we can once again use Linux commands. And now we can edit a configuration file, an ini file. And let's see, we are in the database that, or in the, the directory we need to be in. And let's list the contents just to make sure our file is there, ls-l. And so what we're looking for is the db.ini file, which is right here. So to look at that, we can do sudo nano being our text editor. We're already in the directory that contains this file, so we don't need to do the file path. We don't need var www.html. So let's do D and then tab to autocomplete and db.ini and enter. And so here we need to do some configurations, and so the first thing we need to do is replace the host, and we'll delete the X's and put in localhost, so that being this server, and the username is library admin. So this is the user that's going to be accessing the database. And we need to put in our password. So password. And again, you do want to be sure to create a better password than password, particularly if it's a production server. But for our purposes, I'm just doing something generic. So the database name, that's the database we just created in MySQL. So Omeka. And then these defaults are fine just as they are. So Control X, and yes, we do want to save it, and that is the name we want to save it to. And now we have our ini file edited to what we want. Okay, so now we have our database built. We have gone through all of these instructions here, and this is a good stopping place. I think the next video we will do enable mod rewrite. So we will see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching.